What would you do if practicing your faith became a crime? Mexico, 1928. The temples are closed, the masses are forbidden, and being a priest is equivalent to a death sentence. In the midst of this storm of persecution and violence, a young priest from Jalisco dared to defy the system. Toribio Romo not only kept the flame of faith alive among his people, celebrating clandestine masses in barns, baptizing children under the cover of night, and bringing comfort to the persecuted, but he also gave his own life for it. This is the story of a man who, when faced with the choice between fleeing or staying, chose his people. Chapter 1. The Divine Call. In the small town of Santa Ana de Guadalupe, Jalisco, on April 16, 1900, the cry of a newborn shattered the silence of dawn. Toribio Romo Gonzalez was born into a deeply Catholic family where faith was as natural as the mountain air surrounding his home. His parents, Patricio Romo and Maria Guadalupe Gonzalez, welcomed this child as a gift from heaven, never imagining the extraordinary destiny that awaited him. Toribio's childhood unfolded among cornfields and his father's pens, where he learned the value of hard work and the importance of keeping his eyes fixed on the heavens while his hands toiled the land. From a very young age, he showed a particular curiosity for anything related to the church, and he was often found celebrating Mass with small pieces of bread and water in makeshift cups, much to the delight and wonder of his family. At the age of 12, during a visit by the local parish priest to his school, Toribio experienced what he would later describe as an uncontrollable inner fire. The priest had spoken about vocation and God's calling, and those words resonated in the young boy's heart like cathedral bells. That evening, before the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe that graced the family room, Toribio shared with his parents his desire to become a priest. The news of his vocation surprised no one who knew young Toribio. His sister Maria, who would later also embrace religious life, recalled how her brother spent hours helping at the parish, learning prayers in Latin and studying the catechism with a dedication far beyond that of any other child his age. The townspeople said there was something special in the young man's gaze, a light that seemed to come from another world. Recognizing in Toribio the signs of a true vocation, the village priest began preparing him for entry into the seminary. In the afternoons, after helping his father in the fields, the young boy studied grammar, Latin, and doctrine under the priest's guidance. His determination was such that he walked 5 kilometers daily to receive these lessons, regardless of the weather or fatigue. Thus began the journey of the one who would later become a beacon of hope for thousands seeking a better life. Chapter 2. Seed of Faith. The doors of the San Juan de los Lagos Seminary opened for Toribio in 1912 amid the turbulent winds of the Mexican Revolution. The 12-year-old stepped over the threshold with a mix of excitement and fear, carrying with him barely a suitcase of clothes, his prayer books, and the rosary his mother had given him. The imposing building, with its silent cloisters and cobblestone courtyards, would be his home during the years of formation ahead. The first months at the seminary were a period of intense adjustment. Toribio had to get used to the strict discipline, rigid schedules for prayer and study, and the separation from his family. However, his natural inclination towards spiritual life and his thirst for knowledge helped him quickly stand out among his peers. His teachers noticed not only his academic brilliance, but also his deep humility and his ability to make even the most complex theological concepts accessible to everyone. During his 3rd year at the seminary, a severe economic crisis struck his family. His father fell ill, and the resources to keep Toribio in school began to dwindle. It was then that the young seminarian demonstrated his unwavering determination. He began giving private lessons to the children of well-off families in the city to continue his education. By night, after his own studies, he dedicated hours to preparing his lessons, sleeping only as much as necessary, yet never losing his smile or fervor for his vocation. Toribio's formation coincided with a period of growing political tension in Mexico. News of conflicts between the church and the state reached the seminary, and the seminarians began preparing for difficult times ahead. Toribio distinguished himself by his ability to remain calm amid uncertainty, becoming a pillar of support for his companions. In letters home, he wrote about the importance of keeping faith alive even in the darkest moments. As his formation neared its end, Toribio underwent a period of intense spiritual trial. Like many saints before him, he experienced what mystics call the dark night of the soul. For weeks he battled doubts about his vocation and the future that awaited him. Yet it was precisely during this period of spiritual aridity that his faith deepened beyond mere feeling, rooting itself in an unshakable conviction that would prepare him for his future role as a martyr. Before continuing, we would like to know, had you already known the story of Saint Toribio Romo? Would you like to learn more about this brave Mexican saint? Share your thoughts in the comments, whether this is your first time hearing about him or you have experienced his devotion before. Your testimony may inspire others to discover his extraordinary life. Chapter 3. The Young Priest. On December 23, 1922, the Guadalajara Cathedral shone with the light of hundreds of candles. Amid incense and Gregorian chants, a young Toribio Romo, kneeling before the main altar, received the sacramental ordination. His hands trembled slightly as the bishop anointed them with the holy chrism. In the pews, his family held back tears of joy, especially his mother, who had sewn by hand the chasuble that now adorned her son. Father Toribio's first Mass was held in his native town, Santa Ana de Guadalupe. The small chapel was packed. Everyone wanted to see the hometown son return as a priest. During the homily, his clear and firm voice captivated those present as he shared his vision. "I do not come only to pray with you. I come to work alongside you. Faith without works is dead." These words would set the tone for his ministry in the years to come. The first months as a parish priest in Tequila, Jalisco, revealed a different kind of priest. While others confined themselves to traditional religious functions, Father Toribio immersed himself in his community's life. He visited workers in the agave fields, organized evening classes for children who worked during the day, and established a small cooperative so that local farmers could sell their products at fair prices. His superiors soon noticed that this young priest had a special gift for igniting hope amid poverty. Political tensions were rising in Mexico, yet Father Toribio remained focused on his mission. Upon arriving as a parish priest in Tequila, he found a community divided by old family rivalries. With patience and wisdom beyond his years, he began to build bridges between the opposing groups. He organized festivals in which everyone participated, created community projects that required mutual cooperation, and gradually, old wounds began to heal. True religion, he would say, is measured by the love we are capable of giving to those who think differently. However, dark clouds of religious persecution were gathering. In clergy meetings, alarming news came from other regions: closed temples, expelled priests, arrested faithful. The young Father Toribio listened to these reports with a mix of concern and determination. One night, after a long day of pastoral work, he wrote in his diary, "If God asks me to be a shepherd, I must be willing to give my life for my sheep. This is not a time to flee, it is a time to show that our faith is stronger than fear." Chapter 4. Shepherd of the People. In the small town of Agua Caliente, where Father Toribio was assigned in 1923, dawn began with the sound of his footsteps on the cobblestone streets. Even before celebrating the first Mass of the day, he had already visited the sick, bringing not only spiritual comfort, but also medicines bought with his own salary. The town's inhabitants soon began to call him the Father who rises with the sun, for he seemed to be everywhere he was needed. Education became his most passionate calling. In the parish courtyard, he established an impromptu school where children who could not afford formal education found a place to learn. Afternoons rang with the sound of laughter and the scratching of pencils as Father Toribio taught reading, mathematics, and catechism. "Every child who learns to read," he would say, "is a light that shines against the darkness of ignorance." His concern for youth went beyond basic education. Noticing how many young people fell into alcoholism due to lack of opportunity, he organized workshops in carpentry, blacksmithing, and sewing. He convinced local artisans to share their knowledge, and soon the church's atrium became a center of learning and hope. Families began to notice the change. Their children now had a purpose, a direction, a future. The women of the town found in Father Toribio an unexpected ally. When he discovered that many single mothers struggled to support their children, he set up a sewing cooperative. He secured sewing machines and contracts with merchants from neighboring towns. "Dignity," he preached, "is not a privilege for the few, but a right for all." His Sunday homilies interwove the gospel with themes of social justice, always expressed with love, never with resentment. As his reputation as a committed shepherd grew, rumors of impending persecution also increased. Some parishioners warned him that his social work might be seen as subversive by the authorities. His response was characteristic. "If helping one's neighbor is a crime, then judge me guilty. We cannot preach the love of God without showing that love through concrete actions." These words, spoken with the serenity of one who knows his mission, would resonate prophetically in the years to follow. Chapter 5. Times of Trial. On the morning of July 31st, 1926, Father Toribio looked with a heavy heart at the government decree posted on his church door. The Kai's law was coming into force, and with it, religious persecution officially began. His hands involuntarily crumpled the paper as he read its provisions: the prohibition of celebrating Mass, the obligation to register with the government, and the limitation on the number of priests. The temple he loved so dearly was to close its doors. That night he gathered the community leaders in the sacristy. By candlelight, they devised plans to keep the faith alive. "You cannot close our hearts even if you close our churches," he whispered to his closest parishioners. They organized a network of safe houses where the sacraments could be celebrated, established secret codes to signal the presence of soldiers, and designated messengers to keep the Christian communities in the region connected. Father Toribio's creativity manifested in surprising ways. He transformed barns into improvised chapels, used coded church bells on haciendas to announce prayer meetings, and taught children to recognize discreet signals indicating the presence of a priest in the area. Marriages were celebrated at midnight, baptisms at dawn, and the Eucharist was hidden in unsuspected places to be administered to the sick. Tension grew day by day. Many priests had fled to cities or abroad, but Father Toribio felt his place was with his people. One afternoon, while hearing confessions in a stable converted into a confessional, he heard distant gunshots. "Father, you must leave," an elderly woman pleaded. His response was simple: what kind of shepherd abandons his sheep when the wolf comes? Yet in his personal diary that night he wrote, "Fear is human, but faith must be stronger. Lord, give me the strength for what is to come." The authorities began to suspect his activities. Soldiers conducted increasingly frequent searches, and informants proliferated in the town. Despite the growing danger, Father Toribio found innovative ways to continue his ministry. Disguised as a peasant, he visited families, bringing not only the sacraments but also hope and comfort. "Faith," he said, "is like river water. If you block it with a stone, it will find another path to flow." Chapter 6. The Underground Church. By early 1927, Father Toribio's life had transformed into a clandestine mission. His parish no longer had walls or towers. It spread across mountain caves, remote stables, and hidden basements. Mass was celebrated in hushed tones, and the Blessed Sacrament was kept in carved wooden boxes made to resemble farming tools. Every movement required precision and caution. The support network he had built worked with remarkable ingenuity. The women of the town devised a system of signals using hanging clothes. A white sheet meant safe passage, while a red shawl warned of soldiers in the area. Children became unsuspecting messengers, and itinerant merchants passed on vital information while selling their wares. It was an invisible yet effective network. The night became their best ally. Under the cover of darkness, Father Toribio moved from house to house, delivering the sacraments and the comfort of faith. A lantern in a window, a particular whistle, the bark of a dog. Each signal had its meaning in this elaborate system of spiritual survival. "Night," he wrote in a letter to his sister, "has become our church, and the stars our altar candles." Religious education continued in creative ways. Grandmothers taught the catechism while seemingly recounting traditional stories. Children's games hid prayers, and popular songs were adapted to convey messages of faith. Father Toribio had created a system where every element of everyday life became an opportunity to keep faith alive. Despite the constant danger, his spirit remained unbroken. "Every time we gather in secret," he murmured to his faithful in dark barns and damp basements, "we relive the primitive church. We are not the first to face persecution, and our faith, like that of those before us, will emerge strengthened." Chapter 7. The Protector of the Vulnerable. At the first light of dawn, Father Toribio was already preparing parcels of food and medicine. His small room had become a center of aid for families fleeing persecution. "Christians are like stars," he would say as he worked. "We shine brightest in the dark." Each passing day brought the challenge of protecting more people without drawing the authorities' attention. His network of support now extended well beyond his parish. He organized a system of safe houses where persecuted families could find temporary refuge. The muleteers who transported goods between towns became his most valuable allies, carrying coded messages and medicines hidden among their products. The women of the community united under his guidance to create a mutual aid network. While some cooked for the refugee families, others cared for children whose parents had been arrested or forced to flee. "Charity," Father Toribio taught, "is our best weapon against hatred." In secret, he kept a record of each separated family, hoping that one day they might be reunited. The community's youth saw in him an indefatigable protector. When Catholic schools were closed, he organized clandestine classes in various homes. The children learned not only basic subjects, but also values of peaceful resistance and solidarity. "Educating in times of persecution," he wrote in his diary, "is like planting seeds during a storm. You must have faith that the sun will eventually shine." Despite the mounting danger, his determination never wavered. One night, while tending to a group of refugees, he heard patrols nearby. Instead of fleeing, he remained with them, comforting and praying softly. "If God is with us," he murmured in the darkness, "who can be against us?" Chapter 8. The Last Masses. February 1928 brought with it an air of foreboding. Reports of captured and executed priests came with alarming frequency. Father Toribio now celebrated Mass in different locations each day, never using the same spot twice in a row. His homilies, though brief out of necessity, carried a special weight. Every Mass could be the last, so let us celebrate it as if it were the first. His closest parishioners begged him to flee to the city, where he might more easily blend in with the crowd. His sister Maria, serving as a nun in another state, had sent him an urgent letter offering refuge. His response was characteristic. "A shepherd does not abandon his sheep when the wolf comes. If I must die, let it be here among my people." Each refusal to flee was a reaffirmation of his commitment. The Masses grew more intimate and profound. In dark barns, remote caves, and secret basements, Father Toribio celebrated the sacraments with moving intensity. Those who attended would later recall how his hands trembled ever so slightly as he lifted the host, not from fear, but from the emotion of the sacred amid danger. At every clandestine Mass, he said, we relive the mystery of Calvary. At dawn, after a night of underground ministry, Father Toribio wrote his final words in his diary. The wheat must die in order to bear fruit. If my blood can serve the peace of Mexico and the flourishing of faith, I offer it gladly. A few hours later, soldiers would surround his hideout. The shepherd had decided to stay with his sheep until the end. Chapter 9. The Martyrdom. Dawn on February 25, 1928, arrived with a deceptive calm in Tequila, Jalisco. Father Toribio had just finished a clandestine Mass at the Agua Caliente Ranch, where he had taken refuge with his brother Roman. The first rays of the sun barely filtered through the gaps in the barn when the sound of horses and military boots shattered the morning silence. You are surrounded. Come out with your hands up. The gruff voice of the commander echoed in the cold morning air. Father Toribio, who had just removed his sacred vestments, exchanged a look with his brother. Roman, he whispered, we must protect the blessed sacrament. With trembling but determined hands, they consumed the remaining consecrated hosts, while the pounding on the door grew ever more insistent. When the soldiers finally burst into the barn, they found Father Toribio standing, his serenity baffling his captors. I am Father Toribio Romo, he declared clearly. There is no need for violence. A young officer, surprised by his calm, hesitated for a moment. But the orders were clear. No priest was to be left free. The sound of gunfire shattered the morning calm. Father Toribio's last words were a prayer. Lord, forgive them and receive my soul. His body fell upon the barn's floor where moments earlier he had celebrated his final Mass. His brother Roman, wounded but alive, witnessed how the martyr, even in his final moments, maintained the dignity and faith that had characterized his entire life. Chapter 10. The legacy lives on. In the days following Father Toribio's martyrdom, an extraordinary phenomenon began to emerge in the region. Far from being intimidated, the community found in his sacrifice a renewed source of courage. The support networks he had built not only survived but grew stronger, as the faithful whispered, his blood did not fall on barren soil. Stories of his life and death spread by word of mouth. Everyone who had known him had a memory to share, his kindness to the poor, his bravery in the face of danger, his joy even in the darkest moments. The children he had secretly taught now passed on his teachings to others, multiplying his legacy of faith and peaceful resistance. A spontaneous popular devotion arose. In homes, alongside family images, small photographs of Father Toribio appeared. Mothers taught their children the prayers he had composed, and the farmers recounted how his words of encouragement had sustained them in difficult times. We do not call him a martyr, an elderly woman would say. We call him our friend. His writings, carefully preserved by those who knew him, revealed the depth of his spirituality. His diary, saved by his sister Maria, showed a man who had consciously foreseen and accepted the possibility of martyrdom. True victory, he had written, is not in avoiding sacrifice, but in transforming it into love. The impact of his death spread far beyond his small parish. Other persecuted priests found in his example the strength to continue their ministry. The Christian communities, inspired by his courage, developed new ways to keep their faith alive. Like a seed planted in fertile soil, his martyrdom began to bear fruit in hope and renewal amid persecution. Chapter 11. Miracles and Testimonies. The first accounts of extraordinary favors began to appear soon after his death. In 1929, a family from Jalisco, threatened by the authorities, recounted how they managed to escape thanks to the help of a young priest who had shown them a safe path. Later, when they saw a photograph of Father Toribio, they were astonished. It was the same man who had helped them, a year after his martyrdom. The stories multiplied. Farmers received mysterious help at critical moments. The sick experienced inexplicable recoveries, and families overcame economic crises after invoking his intercession. Each testimony was carefully documented by the local church, which began to see a pattern in these events. Father Toribio seemed especially close to those facing extreme danger or need. A particularly notable case occurred in 1931. A desperate mother, confronted with the terminal illness of her young child, visited Father Toribio's tomb. That night, according to her testimony, a young priest appeared at the hospital, blessed the child, and then disappeared. By morning, the doctors could not explain the child's sudden recovery. The description of the mysterious priest exactly matched that of Father Toribio. The popular devotion grew organically, without official promotion by the church. People began leaving small notes of gratitude on his tomb, and his photograph appeared in more and more homes. Testimonies of thanks poured in not only from Mexico, but also from as far away as the United States and Central America. Local priests, initially cautious about this spontaneous devotion, were impressed by the solidity of the testimonies and the genuine transformation in the lives of those who experienced his intercession. True miracles, commented an elderly parish priest, are not merely these extraordinary events, but the profound changes in the hearts of those who experience them. Chapter 12. Patron of Migrants. The special bond between Father Toribio and migrants began to manifest in a surprising way in the 1970s. Workers crossing the border between Mexico and the United States started reporting encounters with a young priest who offered them water, guidance, and assistance in the most critical moments of their journey. Only later, upon seeing his image in a church, did they discover the identity of their mysterious benefactor. The testimonies followed a similar pattern. In moments of extreme danger or despair, a young priest dressed in black would appear, providing exactly what was needed: water in the desert, directions when lost, shelter when fleeing traffickers. The consistency of these accounts and the impossibility of coordination among such geographically dispersed testimonies caught the attention of ecclesiastical investigators. In 1982, a group of migrants lost in the Arizona desert was rescued, thanks to directions from a Mexican father who showed them the way to a relief point. When they arrived safely and saw Father Toribio's image in the Assistance Center's chapel, they recognized him immediately. His testimony, documented by border authorities and the church, became one of the most famous cases. The devotion quickly spread among migrant communities on both sides of the border. Chapels dedicated to Father Toribio multiplied in areas with heavy migrant traffic. His image, often accompanied by small water bottles as ex-votos, became a symbol of hope for those embarking on the perilous journey in search of a better life. By the time of his canonization, the title of Patron of Migrants was already a reality in popular devotion. His own story of persecution and clandestinity resonated deeply with the migrant experience. As one devotee expressed, Father Toribio understands what it is to walk in fear, to seek refuge, to depend on the kindness of strangers. That is why he helps us, because he too has lived as we do. Chapter 15. Prayer to the Saint. A special prayer that gathers his spirit and unique charisma. Saint Toribio Romo, courageous shepherd who did not abandon your flock in the dark hour of persecution, hear our prayer. You who knew fear but overcame it with faith, who experienced danger but faced it with love, intercede for us today at God's throne. Like the good shepherd who gives his life for his sheep, you gave everything for your people. In the darkest nights, when faith was a crime and love an act of rebellion, you kept the flame of hope burning. Today we ask you to ignite that same light in our hearts, so that we may never lack the courage to live our faith with the same selflessness you showed. Protector of migrants and refugees, you who appear as an angel of comfort on perilous paths, guide those who now traverse deserts of loneliness and mountains of despair. May your mysterious presence continue to offer water to the thirsty, direction to the lost, and hope to the discouraged. Teacher of youth and defender of the poor, who taught us that true religion is measured by the love we have for our neighbor, help us build a more just world. Following your example, may we see in every person in need the face of Christ, and may our hands never tire of serving, our feet never hesitate to go where needed, and our hearts remain ever open to the cries of the suffering. Saint Toribio, martyr of Christ, who shed your blood like a seed of faith and reconciliation, pray for peace on our lands. May your sacrifice remind us that love is stronger than hate, that faith is more powerful than fear, and that death does not have the final word when one lives for the truth. Amen.